Could Bayley's shocking return to WWE television actually be the thing that forces a top babyface to finally turn heel? Well, look, the role model Bayley, she is back on Monday Night Raw after a few month hiatus, and she admittedly made a statement by brutally attacking her longtime rival and our women's Intercontinental Champion, the man Becky Lynch. This has reignited one of the most important feuds in modern women's wrestling history. But there's a twist that you're not seeing, something in which could be happening, and I'm 100% convinced that we're going to be getting it. Everyone assumes that this is just setting up another classic hero versus villain storyline for a upcoming PLE. What happens if the real purpose of Bayley's return isn't that to be Becky Lynch's next opponent, but be the catalyst that makes a shocking turn that no one ever seen? Now, we know that Becky Lynch attacked Bayley at WrestleMania. Bayley was slated to team up with then women's IC champion Lyra Valkyria to take on Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez for the women's tag team titles. It was Bayley who was attacked in a backstage segment the night before on WrestleMania Saturday, preventing her from working the following night, leading to a returning Becky Lynch who teamed up with Lyra, and they went on to beat Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez for the women's tag team championships. The next night on Monday Night Raw, it was Becky Lynch and Lyra Valkyria losing the women's tag team championships. After the match, it was Becky Lynch turning heel and attacking Lyra. This led to them working a few matches before Becky Lynch ultimately won the women's Intercontinental Championship. Now, as WWE approaches Evolution 2, we still don't know a date for Becky Lynch versus Bayley. We do know that Bayley will be challenging for the Women's IC Championship. And they opted to do the first match on next week's episode of Monday Night Raw, but I still envision them working a match at Evolution 2, perhaps a stipulation or a gimmick to go along with it. Time will tell how that folds out. What I want to talk about is something that you're not looking at. I believe that WWE has set the stage for a pretty interesting turn, with WWE opting to have Becky go over Lyra and win the Women's Intercontinental Championship. Not only does it give some shine to Lyra, it also sets the feud that we are seeing now between Bayley and Becky Lynch, which is something that they've really kept limited over the last decade or so, considering that these two have been in the company for as long as they have. They really haven't had some mega feuds, right? Now we're seeing that play out. But I don't see Bayley beating Becky Lynch to win the women's IC title. So how do they get out of this? How do they keep the title on Becky? How do they keep Bayley strong? And what is next for Lyra, who has not been seen on television since losing the women's IC title? I believe we are setting up a heel turn for Lyra Valkyria. I think Lyra is going to get involved. And I think that she is going to cost Bayley the championship. She's going to turn heel, and then coming out in the Bayley versus Becky Lynch feud, they are now setting a Bayley versus Lyra Valkyria feud. That's the way I see this going. This will do a lot of things. It gets Becky to go off and do something new while keeping the championship on her. It also sets up a pretty notable feud for not only Bayley, but also Lyra Valkyria. It also gives Lyra Valkyria a new, fresh coat of paint. We've not seen her as a heel on the main roster. By doing that, or at least in this role, she has been a tweener in the past, so I don't want to say that she's never been a heel, but still, a full-blown heel in this role as a top-tier star or an upper card star, we had not seen that yet. And that idea of doing something like that and giving her such epic, big-time, money-making, drawing feuds back to back with Becky, with Bayley, those are interesting dynamics. That is setting the bar very, very high for the expectations in which WWE has for Lyra, and they should, right? She comes across as a star. From the minute her entrance music hits, she's over like Rover. She does come across as a star. She looks the part, she acts the part, she is the part. And I think if WWE opts to go in that direction, then I think that's amazing. I think it's wonderful. And I am really hopeful that they would end up doing that. Becky Lynch and Bayley is a fun feud, right? Because we both know these stars. We love these stars, whether they're heels or baby faces. They are, in my opinion, Becky is definitely Mount Rushmore of women's wrestling. I think Bayley has a very, very strong argument of being on that. Um, Not to segue too much, but if I'm giving my list, it's Trish Stratus, it's Charlotte Flair, Becky Lynch, and I'm probably going to go Mickie James as that fourth, right? You can make the argument Gail Kim. You can make the argument for Mercedes Moné. There's a lot of interesting dynamics that you can go in. But Becky Lynch and Bayley are, they're such big parts of what we know women's wrestling to be today, right? Because without them, without Becky, without Bayley, without Mercedes, without Charlotte, the wrestling world and women's wrestling is completely different. It's completely upside down. You don't realize what you had until it's gone, right? And you don't realize what has come before you and the everything that fans have had to endure over the years, whether it be the mid 2000s women's wrestling, whether it be the Divas era, right, and leading to give Divas a chance. The ideology of using the diva term for women's wrestling is appalling in retrospect, but they are, right? Like, but Bayley and Mercedes and Charlotte and Mercedes and all of them, all the four horsewomen, your Mickie James, your Trish Stratus, your Litas, your Michelle McCool's, your Beth Phoenix's, Mickie James, Awesome Kong, all those talents, very important to what we know women's wrestling is today. All right. So I think you got to give them where credit is due. I think you have to look at it and go, okay, these talents are different. They've earned their spot where they're at. And they changed the business, right? They changed the business in a lot of ways. And the business is not the same if you don't have those talents come along, right? Those talents are very, very important to women's wrestling. And more importantly, they're very important to just overall wrestling, right? Like, you need them because without Becky, without Charlotte, without Ronda, right, you don't get the first ever women's WrestleMania main event, right? We got that a few years afterwards with Sasha Banks then and Bianca Belair. You don't get all of the moments, all the Hell in a Cell matches, or the ladder matches, or the Money in the Banks, or the Elimination Chambers, or the Royal Rumbles, or all of these, or any of the gimmicks that go along with it. You don't get that without these stars. So I think they are very important to the history of business.